Hello, this is Leo Gray coming to you from Sona Hostel Boutique Dormitorio in Merida, Mexico, on behalf of Kristen Olson's Urban Yoga Center in Palm Springs, Faraway Palm Springs. Visit us online at urbanyoga.org or Kristen Olson's Urban Yoga Center on Facebook. Check out the schedule of daily classes offered online, person, and local, and always available on YouTube. This one is being made just for YouTube because no one logs on to class today. So this will be a short, but students have let us know that they like to have short classes available when they go to look for videos to practice with. When they don't have an hour to give to the practice. Also, when you visit us online, you can check out the tip jar that's there. You can make contributions, one-time contributions or recurring contributions via Zelle or Venmo or PayPal to support these classes that we offer live and these videos that you can enjoy at your convenience. Today, I'm going to do a shorter segment focusing on our hands and feet. Now, we use our hands and feet a lot in practice. We don't maybe talk about them as much as we talk about arms, legs, other parts of the body. Hands and feet are very important, and I like to say they do a lot for us. We don't do as much for them. Maybe we don't do enough for them. So a simple thing we'll do, you can start out sitting like this or something similar to this. Maybe sit up on some props if you like to do that. Lifting your leg by your calf or your shin. So some folks like that grip, some folks like this grip, whatever works for you. Let the foot be lifted, let the ankle be loose. And interlace your fingers between your toes. Maybe not easy to do, not so easy for me. Big hands. And letting the foot and the ankle remain passive, roll your foot in circles. So yes, this is opening your ankle, but also there's acupressure going on here. Because of the way my toes and fingers are interlaced, because of the way the ball on my foot is pressing to my palm, there are a lot of nerve endings in our hands and feet, and those nerves reach in towards the center of the body, all throughout the body. Change direction. The person who I first learned this from, Becky Thompson, when teaching at the Dorchester YMCA in Boston, she said this is like giving your internal organs a massage when you do this with your feet. Hands and feet, I should say. And usually this is paired with or added in because it's a typical sequence is to support the weight of your whole leg and rock your femur in your hip side. So that is less about hands and feet, but that's usually the next thing. Just go to the second foot for now. Focus more on that. Making those circles slow and gentle, letting your ankle remain passive. So nice to be able to work outdoors. Actually, not very long ago, pretty much on this very spot, I was eating breakfast. And just off to the side here was the breakfast table. Just moved to the side, set up for classes today, because there's some work going on in the other part of the courtyard where I taught Monday. So we'll skip circling this light because we're focusing on hands and feet. So a nice sequence for the hands. That was more about the feet. What involved the hands is to stretch your hands like this. Put your right hand out in front of you with your palm facing up. And we're just going to spend one breath per finger. You could do more breaths than that if you wanted to. Let's do two. Give it a little longer demonstration. So palm up, take hold of the pinky with the opposite hand, Inhale, gently draw your pinky out. And exhale, draw it down. Opening palm, wrist, and stretching the forearm. I can feel that all the way up here. Next finger, inhale, exhale. And then if you want, take an additional breath. Maybe you want to take 5 breaths. Whatever you want, whatever feels good to you. And maybe that looks crazy. Maybe your hand's not as flexible as mine, your wrist's not as flexible as mine. Go to the edge of your comfort zone, exploring that. Back away from anything that hurts. Don't try to make your hand look like this. It doesn't have to go this far. But then there's a lot. This is my work. I get to practice. That's my job. So things that you might do once in a while, I get to do daily, or even things you get to do daily, maybe I do 3 times a day. After you've done your thumb, you switch hands. Inhale, draw out. Exhale, draw down, exploring for as many breaths as you like. And maybe one digit feels different than the previous. Maybe you spend more time on that. Of course, acupressure going on here. So a lot of pressure on the finger. There are a lot of little bones in the wrist. There's a lot of tendons, other connective tissue. Hands and feet are very involved structures, very sensitive. And sometimes if that felt very intense, you might have your hands are shaken. My colleague in Boston, Liza Meyer, calls this starfish dance part. Counter pose. No wrong way to do it. Wave your hands around. It's silly. It's a fun part of practice to be silly. So on to some more intense stretching with the feet. I'm going to come up on my hands and knees. You get a side view so you can see what I'm doing with my feet. So sort of jumping around, you could weave these into a longer practice, or you can have just a shorter hands and feet practice. Curl your toes under from table. Walk your hands in towards your knees. You could use blocks under your hands if that seems a little too much. You can bring your hands to your legs. Let's start out tall with the feet engaged like this. And actually, speaking of props will have camera. Grab the box. Should have these handy so I can show you options. So you could walk back like that and use these for support here. Then you're going to sit back towards your heels. Now, this is going to create a lot of sensation in your feet. Maybe this is a lot of sensation in your feet before you sit back. You get to decide, listen to your body, and only go down as far as it feels good to you. I do this a lot. As I've said, this feels great to me sitting right on my heels, really stretching my feet out. Maybe to you that's torture. So you could put a prop here. Maybe it's a block. Maybe it's a rolled up mat, folded blanket, or rolled towel, pillow, bolster, foam roller, anything you want. Put something there between your butt and your heels, or taller support. I could put this block standing on the ground, and then I can sit on it without it pressing against my feet. Different dynamic there. Degree stretch. For me, sitting on my heels feels wonderful, so I'm going to do that. And anytime you can change your mind, like, oh, I don't like it, I want less. Come on, or I like this, I want more. So you can do that just by itself. I like to do another sequence while I'm doing it, and it sets up a pretty good interval of how long I want to stretch my feet. So the hand stretch we just did is one. You can bring your feet into this stretch and then do the 1 breath per finger thing, like that. That's a good interval. But this one is nice as well. This involves big arm movements, but gets into some good hand stretches. Inhale, arms out and up. Exhale, hands to heart. And interlace your fingers. Reach your palms forward, keeping them like that, keeping your hands like that. Raise your arms up overhead. Bring it down in front of you. Draw your hands to heart. Inhale up through center. Exhale out and down. And maybe you do it 3 times. Maybe you do it 5 times. If you're like me, when you interlace your fingers, alternate. So first, you did it probably the automatic intuitive way. Second time, do it the other way. Counterintuitive way. The way that feels weird. Work on some neuroplasticity, some mental flexibility, keeping your brain active, shaking things up in a productive way. And now with the extra talking, I'll tell you that 3 times through this sequence is a long time to be doing this, but it's okay. Best part is yet to come, the counter pose for the feet. You're going to enjoy it more now. So to come out, you tip forward on your hand, move back to table, untuck your toes. And then you can tap your feet on the floor. Now, maybe it's lightning, maybe it's hard, maybe it's slow, maybe it's fast. I do this a lot, but I enjoy real time in my feet. If you look right through, maybe put some padding there. Or the blanket, if it doesn't feel good. And this feels great to do with the feet on the floor. This is a power floor and an outdoor floor. It's wonderful this week. Training feet best for really invigorating. Did have an added layer of enjoyment or an added layer of experience if you're on an upper floor and say a wooden floor and there's someone in the space beneath you. You might get some feedback on that. So some other things that we might do for hands and feet. Sometimes it's just adding some variation into something familiar. So maybe you're in a seated forward fold. Come into it, and I usually will like to cue using the breath to let the fold deepen and not use the strength of the arms to pull yourself down, but it's always okay to let your knees bend in these folds. I like to say that. But you can explore anytime you're in a posture where your hands and feet are near each other. You can explore some stretching of fingers and toes, some interlacing. And what can be really nice is some massage. So I'm just pressing my fingertips to the balls of my feet. Yes, this is changing what's going on in the back. Stretching my arms. So feel free when you get into these shapes to find your hands resting behind you. To explore. Now maybe you come down and say, oh, you don't have a place to go down or something. Maybe not about your goal. You feel like a little percussive. Maybe the thighs feel tight. Another thing we can do that's great with the hands, come into standing forward fold. It's a very similar shape here. We just flipped it 90 degrees. And there's a thing that's called gorilla pose. So you're in a forward fold, you bend your knees a lot, and you're going to lift your feet and slide your hands under your feet. So to whatever degree you can, maybe it's just up to the first knuckle. Fingers are under the toe. Maybe it's further. Maybe your toes come to the base of your fingers. And maybe it's even further. You can get the tips of your toes to crease of your wrist. And that's like the fullest expression of what we talked a little bit. So, see, I'm standing on my hand. So that's the feet pressing the hands to the ground. So, of course, you can always back out if it doesn't feel good. Back up by degrees or back up completely. And it's pleasure if you like with lengthening. Get into some deep stretch in the lower back, the hamstrings, the backs of the legs. Play around, you might feel it in your shoulders. And you can flex your fingers in the sides, the arches of your feet while you're doing all that. If it feels good, if it feels okay for you, and that includes coming out when you're ready. That's all standing on the hands. I want to do that. Slowly. Take a drink of water. It's gorgeous but hot and humid day today. So I come into a downward facing dog to show you some other things you can do. So typically when we come to downward facing dogs, first off, you don't usually just step into it like that. You're doing maybe some sun salutations or something. But we talk about pedaling our feet up and down to get the heels closer to the floor. And that's great, there's nothing wrong with that. But have you ever thought of taking it further? Have you played around some more and flexing your foot the other way, pressing the tops of your toes? I can tell you this is very intense in my calves, at least today. Play with a similar movement and take it to a different degree. Usually we focus on the other end of the movement with the heel pressing towards the floor or onto the floor. But how does it feel in your feet and legs if you go further in the other direction instead of focusing on lifting the heels up and down? It feels great in my toes. Also, sometimes in downward dog, this is what I like to do when I'm doing a sequence for pigeon. After I do a pigeon on each side and come back to downward dog, inhale, lift both heels, and maybe even come up onto your toes. If that's accessible, if that feels good. Feels good to me, I love doing this. You can play with deepening the engagement in hands too. Have you tried? Coming up on the tented fingers and down, down. You come up on tented fingers and your toes. And you can play with other things. It's fun to explore. It's totally fine to make up your own stuff too. Don't have to just stick to what other people show you. So maybe you're at a table and you want to play with different hand positions with less force on your hands. So being in down dog and on fingertips is a lot of pressure. Maybe you just try one hand at a time from table. And so you can lean your weight into the flattened hand and then try leaning more and more into the tented. Build up to doing well. Other things you can do from table, we often do this. Cow pose and cat pose, right? And even though cows don't have toes, maybe you play with your feet here as you bring your heart forward. Roll your toes under and press into them as you bring your heart up and down. So you can play with that. That's a nice one. Pardon me. There's a variation from plank that I picked up picked up by accident during a conversation. I was at an event at the Phoenix. That's the Phoenix Dog Board. There's a plug. It's an organization I used to work with that provides free fitness activities for sober people. So I was working at Phoenix in Boston. They do a lot of CrossFit. They do indoor rock climbing. Different chapters of the Phoenix, they do different kinds of stuff. They all do CrossFit. They all do some yoga now. And then depending on which chapter you're at, they do different things. Anyway, I was in Boston and doing some indoor rock climbing. I think for maybe my second time, I'm talking to a donor who had done a lot of rock climbing, but hadn't done a lot of yoga. And talked about how in my limited experience with the rock climbing, it seemed that I was a natural for that skills and strength I developed through yoga practice, helping with the rock climbing. Each time I went up the wall, I went to another degree of difficulty in the paths that they mark on the wall. If you haven't done indoor rock climbing, they'll put like a numeric scale for a color-coded path. Like this one is a 3.6 and this one is a 3.7. And each time I went up the wall, I made it to the top, and each time I did a more difficult one than I had done before. So this person I was speaking to, we were talking about hand and foot strength that's unique for climbing, and asking me if that's something you develop with yoga. And he said to me, he asked me something no one had ever asked him before. He said, "Can you do a push-up on your fingertips?" So, not knowing the answer, I got down on the floor into a plank, and I attempted my fingers, and I found the answer to the donor's question. And I didn't know until I tried it that I could do a push-up on the fingertips. I would come down onto my back. And talk a little bit more about things we can do for our hands and feet. Often, near the end of a practice, we'll practice an inversion. And the most common one, because it's the most accessible and gentle, is happy baby pose, which goes like this. And it can involve holding your feet or your hands. So I'm partial to holding my big toes in between my first two fingers and my thumb. But you can grab your legs and your feet whatever way works for you. See, with the inversion, which is bringing your feet and your legs higher than your heart, you can incorporate anything you like. Maybe it's interlacing fingers and toes. Maybe it's a bit of massage for your feet. Maybe it's bringing your hands and feet into that gorilla configuration. I'm playing there with not only the acupressure and the massage aspect, maybe, but the deep stretching in the back of the body. And you can always just, maybe you focus more on the feet. Skip, flexing the arms and legs, and just letting the legs hang. Give yourself a bonus. You might play with bringing the soles of your feet together, rubbing them together. If you've never done that before, clapping them together. If you've never done that before, holding them together in your hands. Maybe you've done this. There are some forward folds we do. Your feet together. You might play with, this is one I only recently learned. Let's try to show you, and maybe it's not going to be a little great expression, but that's okay. I was taking a friend's class in Cozumel recently, and she had us come to one of these seated positions with the soles of the feet together. and said, if you can, or if you want to try, interlace your toes. And I had never heard of doing this before. So interlacing the fingers, you do this pretty commonly. Maybe you just do that while you're sitting with your hands on the lap. Did before, we can do some stretching. We do side bends like this. We do binds behind our back. Knuckles down or palms down. But have you ever tried to interlace your toes? I can tell you, it is not as easy as interlacing your fingers, but it's kind of fun to try. So just soles of the feet together, tuck my pinky toe between other pinky toe and my one next to it. Tuck. The next one, you know what interlacing is because it just showed you with the hands. So it's the same simple concept. It's pretty challenging to do. It feels really neat once you've done it. And I think because of the way I'm fixing the camera, you're going to be able to see what I did. Whether I get all of them done or not. So those are interlaced toes. And I can tell you, it feels pretty neat to just keep your feet like that. I'm just leaning into my hands and focusing on how that feels. And as I said, lots of nerve endings in those feet and those toes, right? So you can enjoy that as long as you like. And gently fall apart. I can't do it. I don't know if there's anyone that could do this without using their hands, but just coming out. And you're going to do it the opposite way, just like I said with the hands. Not only bodily flexibility, because it is a different posture. To start the other way. So before I had my left pinky toe closest to the ground, this time I'll have my right pinky toe closest to the ground. Just fill it up. And maybe, with your hands, one way feels intuitive, one way feels weird. Maybe with your feet, one way is harder. I can't say one of these ways feels intuitive and the other one feels weird. They both feel weird because I only heard of doing this a couple weeks ago. So maybe the fourth try for me doing this at all. But I think it feels pretty neat. And maybe you just play while I'm resting here on my hands. I can tend these fingers, relax that arm, tend these fingers. You can't see my hands, but you can see by So I'm just enjoying how it feels on my toes. It's giving some neat activation in my calves, which is interesting. Fundamental connectedness of all things. And anytime you want, you can come out. I just went from interesting sensation to getting a cramp in the calf. So I'm going to take that. Explore counter pose. And you can, even in finishing your practice, you can do some focus on your hands and feet. Maybe instead of the traditional corpse pose Shavasana, when you come to the end of your practice, to do Supta Konasana with the soles of the feet together. I suppose you could interlace your toes and then come into this if you want to try Shavasana with your toes. Intertwine. If lying flat on your back in traditional corpse pose bothers your back, you can take the compression out of your lower back by planting your feet and letting your knees lean in. Focus on grounding in the feet. Your hands resting on the ground, palms down, and mind to a sensation of grounding. This could be at any point in practice. Palms up, receptivity, fingertip to thumb. Focus, closing an energetic loop. And whatever closing posture you use, you might play with just your hands on your body. You feel your heartbeat, you can feel your breathing. Maybe just the grounding weight of your hands on your rib cage, on your pelvis,
and thighs. Heck, maybe you want to interlace your fingers above or under your head.
As with any movement, any posture, any part of the body, do what you want with your hands and feet. Feel free to explore other options as suggested or as they simply come to you. Remember to take care of those hands and feet that do so much for us. Thank you for joining me today. Namaste.